Hi, welcome back to Gen Con. I'm here with Michael Lowe, who's going to talk about some amazing products they've been putting out and maybe a little bit of their history and how they got here.
All right.
So, Michael, when did you start gaming?
A long time ago. 11 years old, I think, was when I did my first AD&D Elven Bard. I think I always had a tendency towards like story gaming. I remember the guy, my buddy who was running me through it, being shocked because, he threw a Balrog at me and I was like, ferocious. And I was like, hi, what's your name? And he was like, why are you not? And I'm like, I don't know this guy. Like, I don't know what he's up to. So I guess I've always been a story gamer at heart.
So you started with AD&D.
Yeah.
Like probably everybody.
Like a lot of us who are ancient.
D&D
yes.
of one version or another.
Right.
You're younger, not AD&D, but so where'd you go from there?
I think I've been playing, I think a lot of where I came to in game design, it both comes from my experience as a teacher, but also my experience as being escaping from the con culture that I was in. I started going to cons when I was in my teen years, in the 90s, and I ultimately felt like a real interrupt with the predominant culture at that time at conventions and in gaming. And so I ended up playing with a lot of people who'd never played a role-playing game before. So I started building things for people who had never played a role-playing game before. And my own values started to really shape how I built. So everything was low or no prep. Everything was highly collaborative. Everything was very story first. And most of these things I was just sort of making for myself. There's a card game I still haven't released, which I swear I spent 15 years on, which is a trope-filled game where you play through a zombie apocalypse movie, but the focus isn't on whether you survive. The focus is on making the best movie you can, so getting all the great lines and the moments of like shocking horror, and it's entirely about you play one trope for your character and one on somebody else on your turn, and then if somebody doesn't like what you're doing, they can spend applause to say and or but and jack your turn. And if you play things that make everybody gasp, you can say applause, and if everybody applauds, you get another point of applause. And so you like move through the plot line that way. But yeah, that's the kind of design I'm into. And yeah, education has also become a big mainstay. So I released Starsworn, which is a play-at-home game full of coloring book illustrations that is zero prep, and it's designed for all ages, fantasy focused. And there's Gigacity Guardians, and those all go with my podcast, which is an all ages AP called Stories RPG. And then my day job is I run luckoflegends.com, which is where I teach kids how to write with role-playing games. So that's kind of my gaming resume, I suppose.
To put it in D&D terms, I would say you have a high charisma. So you bring that to your games. So do you have trouble then working on the mechanics of games?
Actually, it's the other way around for me. So there's a lot of skills you bring to the table, either if you're an educator or if you're just a great storyteller, you're somebody who spent a lot of time telling stories. You get a certain number of skills that you employ without thinking about it. It's the same way in teaching. When I was in the classroom, I had some master's students who studied with me, all of them amazing people, educators in their own right. And one thing that they did that was really cool was they would stop you. You'd run a class, and afterwards they'd lean in and be like, listen, you went over to this kid at this one moment and you said this one thing. How did you know to do that? And I was like, how did I know to do that? Why did I do that? Because when you're at a certain level of proficiency, one of the cool things about building games is it makes you do the same thing that a lot of my master's students did for me, which is stop myself and say, okay, why am I doing these things? How do I know to do them? How can I articulate that for someone else? And education comes into that a lot too, because, boy, designing curriculum and lessons for kids, that's another thing I'm doing. Got a curriculum that's running on the East Coast. A couple teachers have been using my approach full time, and they've been getting huge writing gain scores. So still working on how to communicate that to anyone, but coaching them has been a hugely informative process for me. But yeah, it makes you stop and question your process. And then once you figure out what you're doing, the question becomes, okay, what are the things that I can ask and the mechanics I can create to guide people to do these things so that I can scaffold them into mastery. So that's, again, a concept from education that I'm obsessed with, right? How do you build those steps so that somebody moves from, I don't know what I'm doing, to, oh yeah, I just kind of do it without thinking about it.
Yeah. form ever follows function.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So your function, what would you describe is the function of the games that you love running and playing? And I assume that's what you've created.
I just ran this morning. This was one of the first ones that I worked on that turned into a product. It's produced by Lamp Black and Brimstone, which is amazing. It's run by Jason Lutz, who is a award-winning comic book graphic novelist. He's amazing, and it's beautiful. It's full of the art of Jonas, Matt Connor, who's amazing. He's actually in LA. This is a game about, it's about being in an asteroid mine in the far out of space. And it lets you become the members of this mine. And the point of this game, this was made during the pandemic, it was to create a game which was about community survival. There's tension, there are problems in your community, but you can't run away and you can't kill everybody because every life matters. And if things go wrong on your station, everyone pays. And the goal with this game was very much, if you look at it, this is a zero prep game, and it begins with you as a group of players building your holdfast. So you answer questions like, to what do we hold fast? Principles, data, faith, independence, work ethic, ritual. Right. Who's the most beloved person in the holdfast? And the goal here is getting the players to communally generate a lot of answers that allow the navigator, we don't like GM, we call it the navigator, because it helps steer things, but you're not the master of anything, to give them threads that they can use to create plot hooks. So there's a moment in here where after character creation, everybody stops, and if the navigator needs a moment, they can take it. But it's very simple. Once you've gotten all these threads built, you're like, okay, I know what the problems are, and I know how to cause a problem that everyone will have to struggle together to overcome.
Right.
So the cool piece here is this lets you do the story forward, the really rich kind of storytelling collaboratively that I think is the reason everybody loves the hobby. Like that's the thing that we hold in our hearts. If you talk to somebody who plays a lot of D&D, when you ask them what it is, it's always, well, this one story where? And it's like, yeah, that's not the war game part that you remember. It's the part that really moved you. So this lets you do that with no prep. Nobody has to come to the table having done extra work.
Yeah.
And it also lets you focus on leveraging those questions. I don't know if you know For the Queen.
I don't.
Oh, wow.
I've seen a sign, I thought, here somewhere for it.
It's I think it is if you want an artifact that's kind of a masterclass in design,
Is
For
that
the
the
Queen.
Darrington Press game?
I don't know if it's Darrington. I don't know who produces
okay.
it. It's a tarot deck. The entire game plays with people taking turns and flipping cards.
Okay.
And in For the Queen, you begin as a group of people. You have no characters. You have no character sheet.
Okay.
You just keep answering questions that the next player asks sideways, like, how did the Queen make you proud of yourself once, and why has she never made you proud again? And all of these things, very quickly, everyone who's going around at the table very quickly is like, I know who I am. And you develop these strong feelings about the Queen, who's taking you on a mission to a diplomatic mission to another country. And you also develop very strong feelings about everybody else at the table.
Right.
But it's really a great example of how really good, I think there's a classic mistake about mechanics. We think about fluff and crunch. If you're not rolling dice and there's not numbers involved, there's nothing crunchy happening. Fluff is crunch. If you ask the right question at the table, if you guide people to ask those really emotionally engaging, powerful questions, story happens. You can't prevent it.
I've always had a philosophy on crunch.
Yeah.
I think there's internal and external crunch.
Ooh, interesting.
Because I think if you're rolling dice, it's external to what you're doing. If it's an action you're taking or something you're making a decision on, that's internal. It's your mind creating crunch. And a navigator or a GM can work more with internal crunch than external. External is mostly randomness with some controls over the odds of things happening.
Yeah, that's interesting because I both agree and also slightly take it differently because I'm thinking about, I'm a big believer in, I always say when we roll, it's like I roll for two reasons in the fiction. One is to get inspired. I'm stuck and I don't know what to do and I just need something random to inspire me. And the other one is to ramp drama. I want to get the engagement higher, right? That's the purpose of the crunch for me. That random result means all of a sudden everybody leans in. And it feels more in the fiction like one of those moments in a book where you have an uncertainty. You don't know what the author's going to do. In a movie, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen next. There's a chance this might go horribly wrong. And that ramps your engagement. So it's this push and pull between inspiration and engagement, which to me are both very internal. But the external mechanism helps you ramp the internal.
Yeah.
So
nice.
I both agree, and I also am like, that's an interesting framing. Yes, and I think maybe that's the best mechanics measure for me. The best mechanics are both external. They're external mechanics that help you motivate the internal.
Yeah, and almost any player in your games, the types of games you play, has to be narratively interested. Because like in D&D, you can just roll dice and some people are very happy just fighting things, rolling dice. And they're not really all that interested necessarily in the narrative. But you can have a very narrative-driven D&D game too, depending on the type of players.
Yeah.
Do you think that players that are, I'm going to call them, for the moment, narratively unmotivated, your games tend to not really let you sit like that?
Interesting. You know, I hadn't thought about that. I think of it in a different way, but I'd say it this way. I think it's my job as a designer to create games that invite you to the party. I want you to feel like I just showed up at a party, and it's not that party where I don't want to get involved and I'm standing on the wall and it's awkward because everybody here knows each other. It's the party where there's a lot of wild stuff going on, and the minute you pop your head in the door, somebody's like, hey, come on, we're doing a thing. Like a really good story. And this is the thing that wilds me out. I work a lot with kids. I teach kids to write using narrative games. They build whole worlds together. We get hundreds of pages. Just last week, I had to skip my last class from my last week class. But they were writing a story, Knights of the Microbiome. They were microbes sworn to defend the body from harm. They traveled up to the scalp. They faced a huge army of virally infected bacteria and managed to figure out that there was a villain who had stolen the core orb, which is something a kid created in their story. Because they're all building this, right? Yeah. And those kids, they were absolutely 100% invested in that world. Narrative play is natural to humans. Yep. We do it unscripted. You put 5-year-olds in a room, they're playing a story before you know it. It's weird to me that as adults, those of us who've done a lot of work to kind of like make our brains work narratively, we can sit down without any rules and tell a story. Yeah. But we start needing rules. We don't know how to do it without someone external organizing it for us and scripting us, helping us build. And so I'm really interested in where we lose that, why we lose it, and then also how to build it out and make longer, more sustainable stories happen. So yeah, I guess that's my ethos when I write and create.
So tell me about the things you're doing with kids, because you've been doing stuff with kids for quite a while now.
I'm a teacher, so it's my job.
Right. And I don't say all your games, because you have some games that are also a little more adult.
I do.
But a lot of your games are really driven by a youthful mind.
You know what I'd say? I'd say it's play. So, they look into neuroplasticity, right? And like everybody who keeps their brains active into old age, they have a similar creative itch. They're making things and they're playing. They're having a sense of joy in whatever they do. And so that's what I'm looking for. Communal, creative acts of joy that bring people together. And that works for all ages. I think probably the easiest thing to get people into, so I have a podcast, StoryTalk. It's an AP podcast. Yeah. It is designed to be all ages. And when I say all ages, usually that's a cheap code word people use for, it's for kids. Yep. And it's not. This is the one I want your whole family to be able to listen to, and the adults in the room are going to be enjoying it as much as the kids are. Nice. And I think that those types of experiences, there's a mistake in sort of imagining that they're not possible for grown-ups. I find it's interesting, like, I was a cishet white dude in the growing up in the 90s and playing games. I've had enough edgelord type content to last a lifetime. I'll be honest with you, I think the world is full of a lot of upsetting and difficult things, and I love anybody who wants to process those things with a group of people in a thoughtful way through a narrative game. 100% total respect. I love stories about small things, warm things. And if it's epic or if it's big, it's zany. Who doesn't love a Studio Ghibli film, right? Right. So that's Ghibli is in my heart. I think my favorite movie probably on Earth is got to be Kiki's Delivery Service. Nice. I think it's absolutely the best coming of age story ever created. It's hard to find a book I like more. But part of the reason I love that is it focuses on who people are and how they interact. And creating games that let people create that kind of narrative, become authors who are really thinking about like, okay, how do I want my character to grow? Who do I want my character connected with? What are the moments that make me fall in love with this character or with another character? And inviting them to think that way is really, to me, key to being narratively engaging. Whether you're making something for, that's a little darker in mood or lighter in tone, it's all about people and characters.
I think there's a lot of great creative outside of games.
That
are really family oriented. That really are for the whole family. Like Pixar movies come to mind. Every adult has a Pixar movie they love more than every other one.
Yep.
And every kid has a Pixar movie they love more than every other one.
100%.
So I don't think games should be any different. But do you find inspiration in media outside games that you pull in?
I have an obsessive list of cartoons, which I will give you the entire cartoon list if you ask me. But there are some amazingly narratively profound series that to me feel like a collaborative role-playing game with a longer arc. Hilda. She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Centaur World, it's wildly crazy and wonderful and goofy, and it's a musical, and you will be shocked, but if you stay with it, it's far more adult than you realize. They deal with some very profound themes through this very lighthearted and very silly and very weird story. Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. Infinity Train, that's one not a lot of people have seen. That one has one of the most unbelievable pitches ever. Little girl runs away from home, thinks she's getting onto the train that's going to take her to the summer camp her dad couldn't take her to because he bailed. And it ends up being this train where every car is a different world, and navigating through it takes some puzzle solving, and you have a number on your hand. And nobody explains what the number means and what it means if it goes up or if it goes down. And it ends up being this profound, psychologically complex story about how to deal with your personal problems. That number represents whatever it is you can't let go of or that you're struggling with. And if it goes up, you're leaning into your problem. And if it goes down, you're processing it and moving forward. So narrative tools like that, they inspire me so much because it's a way to externalize elements of story to make them more fun to deal with. This is why I love fantasy and science fiction, because really, speculative fiction, it's the same thing as magical realism. It's just externalizing and making physical and manipulatable the elements of the story emotionally that you want to process. Things about culture, things about self that you want to focus on. Blade Runner, it's a story about identity, right? And it's a story about what makes us human and what makes us feel like we're real, whatever that means, right? And asks that question in all these different ways. I feel like all great art does that in some way or another. It invites you to reflect. I read something recently that I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do with games. And it was art forces you to slow down and focus on something that you might ignore otherwise. It's a moment that makes the self and the world come into focus. It forces you to reflect. And I was like, that's the moment I love in games. It's that moment when people connect with each other and also connect with themselves.
I'm happy running games where we don't have roll a die for combat for 5, 6, or no sessions. It doesn't matter to me.
But see, that's also interesting because if
it happens, and it's organic, and it feels purposeful, all in.
Yeah.
If it's just there because someone gets itchy for a fight, all out. It doesn't feel good then.
But I think that's also part of it too. Like, granted, you're going to have whoever sits down and whatever game they want to play. But that's a couple things about design that I really care about. A game should message who it's for. There's a great. I talk about this a lot. It was a very brief sort of theoretical short article about the eight kinds of fun, and it's just a quick list.
Interesting.
And so they talk about wonder. This is like the feeling of surprise at something new happening. There's narrative. You get really into plot. There's expression. I really want to express who I am in this moment. There's challenge or conflict where you're like, I want to win. and I want there to be win-lose conditions. And then there's fellowship, the feeling of being connected with other people.
Right.
Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the last three. Anyway, the reason I love it as a model is whenever I begin a game, I ask myself, okay, what kind of experience, what kinds of fun? Not, because fun comes in all these different flavors. Yeah. What kinds of fun do I want my players to have at the table? And then that guides every choice I make, both in what I ask and what I say in the text, and also mechanical design. What do I want? What is the fun I want people to be having? Mm-hmm. And then I want my game to message, hey, if you're into narrative and fellowship, this is your game.
Yes.
And that way I make sure that there's a self-selecting process. People who don't want to play that game are less likely to pick it up and be like, ooh, I'd like to play this game. Gosh, it's not the type of fun I like. I'm really disappointed. If it messages right,
Do you do that on your covers and stuff, back covers or whatever?
I can see it. Jonas did the work here. Yeah. Jonas Madden Connor, and he's such a brilliant artist. This is also made by Mo Poplar of ashyfeet.com. Amazing collaborator, incredible designer. But yeah, Jonas Madden Connor, he nailed it. And this is, the quality of a really great artist is they message so much with very little. You can see everybody's working, but you can also see the community. And you can see the vastness of space, but also the small and very mundane things that need to happen, right? So even by the time you read the cover, you're not cyberpunking. Nobody's nobody's going to be dumping a corpse in hiding somebody's dead body. That's not this game, right? Yeah. And there's so many pieces that go into that. And that's one of the things about this hobby that I find wild is it takes so much to make a great game. You need a wonderful artist, a wonderful graphic designer. You need really great mechanics. You need really great writing. There's all these things.
I feel there's two great collaborative arts. Film and games.
Wow.
Because all the other ones you can do by yourself and they'd be totally fine.
I don't know.
You can do art. You can paint.
I think there'd be some engineers who'd be like, you can't make my car without 8 million people. But yes, I agree.
Right. I wouldn't call it engineering. It's creative. I don't know if it's an art, but
it's an open question.
But the things that people traditionally think of as art, writing, painting, or drawing, whatever. The collaborative ones, the ones that force you to be collaborative, are filmmaking and games.
Well,
because they're all about drama and human emotion and connection.
Well, and games have that extra level, so all art, right?
Yeah.
You look at it, you consume it however you consume it, you read it, you watch it. But part of the art is how you react, right? The moment of experience, and it's not necessarily going to be what the artist intended. You're going to have your own reaction. Games take that a step further. You're really making a piece of art to inspire other people to make their own art, which for me is what is so exciting about it. I know that if I make a game that is good, that works, that has all the pieces and parts to help people have the kind of fun I'm promising them, because that's what my cover is.
Right.
Yeah, cover of a game, it's a promise. I'm promising if you stay with me, if you come inside, you're going to get this out of it. If a game is made truly well, it is inspiring other people to create.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, that's entirely at the core of what I do.
Magic.
My whole job is I want to help you learn things that you're excited about so you can go do the things that you want to do in life.
Yeah. And become excited about things you don't know about yet.
Exactly.
Make your brain expand.
Get you hooked on the process of learning and on the process of moving forward. So gaming has that lovely element that teaching does. And to me, they both feel very, writing curriculum and game design to me are the same thing.
Interesting.
It's creating a process that engages and inspires people to learn and create their own things. And so that's why, to me, it felt like a very obvious thing that, it's kind of like when I realized, I was like, oh, I should have been using games to teach for years now. This is what I do. I do this in my private life. I do it in my professional life. It's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are some cool things?
So the pod, that I can talk about. I am under an NDA and cannot talk about certain things. But I will say that I am, as always, working on making games. I'm really focused, that word all ages, that term.
Yeah.
Again, I think I have a little hitch about that term because I do think there's a need for games that help bridge the generation gap between gamers. I think adults have a lot to learn and also a lot of fun that they're missing in not playing narrative games with people of different ages.
Yeah.
I think age-diverse groups are wonderful places for inspiration and joy and connectivity. And so when I create, I'm very focused on all ages games. So I'm working on all ages game projects. The podcast is ongoing. Luna Uni, which I kickstarted last year, is one of the many worlds that I use in teaching. I have something like 20, and kids are always making new ones, but it's one of the ones I've put together for release. And it was kickstarted last year. It's been a year. I've been hammering on the curriculum. The game's done. It's the curricular approach that is not quite finished. But that should be finished before Christmas. Should be finished within the next couple of months.
Oh, wonderful.
And really excited to have that out, because it's, to my knowledge, the only academically focused, classroom-ready role-playing approach for writing, period. I don't know. I don't know of any others. I know a lot of therapeutic games.
Yeah.
I know some smaller games
that are the same thing as classroom.
It's not. I know a lot of games that are designed for helping build socio-emotional skills. Mm-hmm. I have a collaborator. He's amazing. Guild Chronicles, Andrew Harris. He works with teaching executive functioning to kids who are ND, and does amazing work with that, and has designed a game, Guild Chronicles, that is for helping with both executive functioning and also collaboration. Yeah. So we're very aligned. I'm going to see him later today. Probably going to play in his game. But I am working very hard on finding ways to bring, I think we're at a watershed moment. I think gaming, social gaming, storytelling gaming, fiction-first gaming is a tool that has been massively misunderstood and neglected as a tool for helping people grow in all the ways, emotionally, personally, professionally. And I'm really interested in making games that help not just kids, but people of all ages both connect with one another and learn and grow. Yeah. So got a lot of projects in the works that'll do that. Luna Uni's one of them. The other one I can't talk about. And then, of course, teaching nonstop. If anybody out there has a kid who wants to write or likes stories and doesn't want to write, luckoflegends.com. I have weekly classes during the year, week-long classes all summer long. Some of my groups have been going for 3 years now, and they literally have written hundreds of pages. They've got novels that they've collaborated on. It's great. Cool. So yeah, that's what I'm up to, and that's what I do.
Well, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes here at Gen Con. I know you've got a super busy time.
Utterly my pleasure.
If you don't know, Michael Lowe brings, if you hadn't already seen it, brings magical beauty to gaming, meant for both expanding your mind and expanding your ability to feel and perceive and narrate. I'm happy to have you.
Gosh, I need a tattoo of that. That was the nicest thing. I'm turning red. Thank you.
I'll see you,
dude, Scott.
I'll see you at the next con.
Yes, you will, and hopefully before then. If you ever want me to run a game for you, let me know.
Oh my God,
I would run Holdfast in a hot second. That one's so much fun. The game we ran this morning. Can I just share a little detail?
Sure.
They created this mine, and they decided there was this substance called mallow that they were mining that could be turned into anything, but they had been there for generations, and they'd sort of forgotten a lot about how they came there. The one ritual they had is they had to make quota and fire it off in a big wad into space to help the war effort. Anyway, they decided the name because we had this stuff that was mana. We were like, oh, what could it be? It could be heaven, it could be all these things. They were like, what about Nirvana? And we all kind of laughed, and I was like, wait a minute. And the whole game, Nirvana became like a theme. So they would do this for Heart-Shaped Box as they're like hello to each other. Right. And all their call and responses, they would say, today I found my friends, and the response was, they're in my head. And that was how they would say hello. So it was just wonderful. I'd love to run that game for you.
Love it. I'll get a group.
Right on.
Take it easy.